Well, thank you, Suhas. Um, First of all, my many congratulations to Sugata. He is so prolific. I mean, the book on Devagowda, somebody who introduced him was absolutely right. Excavating forgotten history. And then to the book on Rahul Gandhi, and now this wonderful, well researched book. But Sugata is more than just research or professionalism. He is thorough, detailed observation, and reflective. In whatever he writes, speaks. So, those of you who have not read the book will enjoy it as he's read parts of it. I also kept, turning the pages because I knew some of the characters well. So I wanted to know more and more and more. But it's a story that needed to be told. And it's not only a story about, the resistance network that so many Indians and others created in the US and in Europe to resist the authoritarian regime of Indira Gandhi. They were truly the conscience keepers of that period. And I would say, in what they have continued to do, they are also well and truly our nation builders. So, congratulations, Sugata, for bringing this into the public domain in such a detailed way. A word about those about whom the book has been written. Suhas mentioned, Himmat. In 1976, I was working in Himmat. I had cut my teeth in journalism by working in Himmat, a small independent news weekly that came out from Bombay, now Mumbai. Chief editor Rajmohan Gandhi, grandson of Mahatma Gandhi, editor Kalpana Sharma, who's gone on to write on issues of environment, like Ravi has pursued those issues. And in those days, in 1976, in the middle of 1976, what was really uppermost was George Fernandez, the most wanted man in India. And Mrs. Gandhi has set up a special cell in Delhi to step up efforts to nab him. And 7 agencies of the state government and the central government were coordinating their effort on how to get him. And on 10th June, they got him in Calcutta, picked him up from a church compound. And the previous year, he'd been on the run. Of course, there were newsletters that would come. And those of us on Himmat sometimes would go across on a Sunday morning there was a socialist network. There was a gentleman we would go to in Dadar. And they would give us all that could not be printed. And we would put it in order, news, and that would be sent, distributed underground. To various people. So we would wait for these scraps of information that came our way, where George was, the heroics, and how later we found, when he left, when he went underground, and Laila was left there with their 17-month-old son, to which you referred. And 3 days later, he knew she was going to pass through Howrah station. And he sent her a note. He had the wherewithal to do that, even at that time. He sent her a note saying, I don't know where this will end, but meanwhile, our son will keep you company. So, of course, they were to meet 22 months later, very turbulent marriage, all that. But, that was the height of what the scene was like. And the other pieces of information we'd wait for was what was happening in the United States of America. I heard about Ravi, I heard about Anand. Of course, we were to meet much later. Ravi came in 1977 to Mumbai. Anand, I met much later, I think 1979. And we'd heard about your Philadelphia walk. We'd heard about Anand's, scholarship being, suspended, and how you were mobilizing people, speaking, holding meetings, and New York Times writing about you people, Indian Opinion, and what it would publish. So all this bit of information was filtering in. And then 1979, I went to a meeting in Bhopal, invited by Anand's sister, and I was amazed to see the awe, and there's no other word for it, in which Anand was held at that time by the young people. Some from JNU, some from other students' organizations. So these were heroes. And as I said earlier, they remained nation builders to this day. So the heroes of the second freedom struggle, and others that one didn't know personally but heard about. Now, I want to say just one word, Sugata, on the key to their success at that time. 50s, 60s, 70s was a period where idealism prevailed. So you had a Ravi Chopra and an Anand Kumar put their careers for which they had gone and their families had sent them a dream to pursue in jeopardy. And they didn't think twice about it. I don't know whether you did, but you didn't think twice about it, I think. And that was a period where it wasn't, this was happening in the United States. In the 70s, what you saw, there were people taking to Naxalism, there was people taking to, socialist groups, there was people going to the RSS, there was the Ramakrishna Mission, there was a desire to go beyond self to bring transformation in society. And that was a very natural thing for many, many, many young people. So that idealism was one of the factors why they succeeded and managed to mobilize public opinion, not only of the Indians who were based there, but of American policy makers, which had a bearing on the situation back home. The other thing that was, I think, key, why, the whole movement, and they were part of that movement against resistance to Indira Gandhi's dictatorship, and that manifested itself back home in India. The political opposition at that time against the dominant Congress had not yet been co-opted in the political structure. There were groups outside. The opposition groups were outside who could raise their voices when things went wrong. Of course, there were unions like the railwaymen's unions, taxi union that George Fernandez headed. This co-option into the political structure took place after 1977, when all these opposition parties entered government. After that, the scene underwent a change. It wasn't quite what it used to be. The third thing that I feel, which has been pointed out by John Hanson, early on in your book, it's very interesting. That key was that they pursued unity in action, not unity in ideology while they were mobilizing opinion out there. Had they made ideology the basis of their mobilization, there would have been 10 groups pursuing different ideological persuasions, and the whole movement might have got fragmented and would not have had the kind of impact it did. I don't know whether they'd agree with this or not, but I found this a very interesting observation in Sugata's book. Now, such an overarching coming together of different forces opposed to an authoritarian force at the time. And this was also happening, remember, not just in the United States of America or in the European capitals. It was happening in the jails of India where the opposition leaders were imprisoned. And this is what was instrumental in bringing together these opposition leaders into one unified entity when Indira Gandhi announced elections on 18th of January 1977. Within 5 days, these people had decided to merge their identities and form one unified Janata Party. So this overarching thing, this happened in 77. It happened over 2.5 years in 87 to 89 again, when the opposition forces came together against Rajiv Gandhi's 414 Lok Sabha seats, and they managed to get, Vishwanath Pratap Singh managed to get centrist forces to form one party, regional parties to form a supporting group outside, and right and left to support this formation. And they threw out Rajiv Gandhi's government with an unprecedented 414 Lok Sabha seats. It came down to 197 seats, and Rajiv Gandhi was replaced by Vishwanath Pratap Singh as the Prime Minister of India in 1989. So while a movements, can go, there can be unity in action instead of unity in just ideology. But when it comes to running a government, it's a different story. Because in 1977, ideology, the dual membership issue, or whether the former Jansangh people who merged their identity into Janata Party will also continue to have membership of the RSS, that issue brought the government down. And so also in 1990, what helped bring the government of Vishwanath Pratap Singh down was Mandal versus Kamandal ideological fault lines. So that is a bigger, more complex thing, but it is interesting that in mounting a movement, unity in action, how important it is as opposed to unity in ideology. The other interesting thing which I wanted today is another thing. I will go to what Sugata has mentioned in his book. Today is the Samvidhan Hatya Divas, observed by the BJP. Now, it is very good to keep that memory alive, because I was thinking, if 65% of India today is under 35, I would say it's safe to assume that 4 out of 5 Indians were neither born or were too young to have any memory of the emergency. To them, actually, we all talk of emergency. It's a big recall for us, what happened 50 years ago, those of us who lived through it. But for most young Indians, or not so young Indians also, they really don't know what it was. So to have a Divas, like you have a girl child Divas, you have many other Divas, to focus on an issue, it's a good thing to remember what happened during those 21 months, so that we never allow it to happen to our democracy. Of course, it is, what have they learned out of it, the political parties, is a different story. Indira Gandhi admitted to excesses, I think early 78. Rahul Gandhi 4 years ago admitted that it was a mistake. But the Congress party has not yet felt it can say it was a blunder. It was a mistake that should not have been done. And we promise it will never be done again. Once the Congress makes that admission, they've done it, but with caveats. Indira Gandhi said, I did it for the nation's security was at peril. But to say it was, Mr. Kharge has given a press conference today, which is also very new. For Congress to face the media, where they know that unpleasant questions will be asked, is a courageous thing to do. But not gone far enough they say it's a deflectory mechanism for the BJP to go in for this Samvidhan Hatya Divas. Now, I don't know whether I should make this point. I should probably end here. Well, very important thing but I will make it. I don't know what the time is. There is a time constraint. You have mentioned a very interesting change in perception that has taken place about the Constitution of India. It has got equated to and identified with B.R. Ambedkar in recent decades. I don't remember in the 80s, or before that Ambedkar was seen the sole repository or sole creator in the way of the Constitution as he is being seen today. And in some way, you point this out, that Constitution has become a political symbol, not just by the Congress party who gained as a result of it in 2024 election, but also equally by the other side, the BJP. Now, for us as citizens, it's a wonderful thing. Both say, we vow, we promise, we are not going to change the Constitution. Constitution is going to remain the centerpiece of our democracy. Very good. We can hold them up to that. But the Constitution has become equal to B.R. Ambedkar, is equal to Dalit, is equal to reservation as continuation, is equal to a political symbol by both sides. So we are now entering a phase that it is not remembering 50 saal pehle emergency kya hua. In an academic way, lamenting. No, we are into a more live situation politically, as far as the Constitution of India is concerned, and preserving what is the letter and spirit of it. It has become a political issue. So, Sugata, I'll end here, but thank you for this book, and all power to you to write many more. And thank you for bringing us the stories of Ravi Chopra, Dr. Anand Kumar, and so many others who made what they did possible so many years ago.